videos on the scientific method. To start off with, we need to talk about what the difference is between the word observation and inference. So first, an observation is what you can actually see, touch, taste, something that you can actually see occurring. You're not making any speculations or anything, it's right there in front of you. An inference means you're taking whatever you're looking at and either using prior knowledge or some sort of background telling me what you think is happening or why it's happening. That is an inference. So what I want you to do is I'm going to put a picture up in just a second, and you're going to tell me 4 observations. 2 quantitative and 2 qualitative. Quantitative being it's dealing with numbers. You're telling me the amount of something or the mass or anything like that, which you can't really tell the mass of a picture. So qualitative is everything else. So if there's numbers involved, it's quantitative. Think about n numbers. Qualitative is everything else. So you're going to tell me 4 observations and 1 inference. Just jot them down in your notes. So I want you to pause the video and come up with 4 observations and 1 inference based on this picture. Now remember, an inference is based on prior knowledge or any sort of speculations. So now we're going to go through the scientific method very quickly because you've learned this ever since you've learned the word science. So it's a series of steps, that scientists use to answer questions and solve problems. The first step is to state the problem. You have to actually have a problem to have occur. So the scientist identifies the subject that he or she wishes to study. Then, once you have a subject that you're going to study, you need to gather information about that subject. So the scientist is going to gather information, research a subject that he or she is going to study, try to get as much information as possible. Then, form a hypothesis. Now, this is another word that you've learned since you've learned the word science. So a hypothesis is a scientist's educated best guess what will happen. So based on the research that they did, they're going to come up with some sort of hypothesis. It must be a statement. Typically, it's an if-then statement, and it must be able to be tested. Once you have your hypothesis and you know what you're looking for, you're going to have a plan and perform an experiment. So the scientist develops a way to collect data to test their hypothesis. To do this, they have to determine what their manipulative variable is, which is changed by the scientist. So what is the scientist going to change? They're going to have control of this variable. Then the responding variable is the one that they're going to measure. So this is the one changing because of the manipulative variable. So to manipulate means to change, responding means to respond. So the responding variable responds to the manipulative. Then you have to figure out what your constants are going to be, which means they're going to remain the same throughout the experiment. So typically like temperature and things like that are going to be constant. Control is a sample of what is being tested to which nothing has been done. It provides a way to measure change. Not all experiments have a control, but it's good to have one if you can. Next step is to look at the data that you collected during your experiment and analyze it. So scientists compile data into charts and graphs so that they can make sense of the information. When you actually see it visually, you're able to tell what's happening. Now when you put it in a graph, the manipulative variable goes on the bottom. It is your x-axis. Responding is your y-axis. The last step is to draw a conclusion. So you look at all the information that you've gotten, the information you gathered at the beginning, what happened during the experiment, and the data that you analyze, and you come up with some sort of conclusion of why it happened. So scientist decides whether the hypothesis was correct and explains why based on the data, and then state any possible errors. So that summarizes the scientific method. We will be doing more in class and actually going through the scientific method and learning more about what the variables are and so forth.